Hey guys, welcome back to another video. This is a follow-up to the God of Thunder Titan build that I made a few days ago. And if you recall in the video, we held a lot of speculation in regards to the new seasonal mod Font of Might that was coming out. Actually just came out 2 days ago. And so here's my basic review on it and build analysis after having that come out. So if you recall in the last video, we had a lot of hope for that build, especially with Font of Might, because if we use 3 arc weapons, say Anarchy, Salvager, Salvo, and a primary with Osmosis, all of our weapons would get a damage buff for essentially what would be picking up a well after getting a grenade kill. And as you know, with this build, we were throwing a hell of a lot of grenades. Unfortunately, it does work, but not as well as you think. So, taking a look real quick, Font of Might essentially picking up a elemental well that matches your subclass energy type, grants a temporary bonus to weapon damage of that same type. Again, arc build. You see where I'm going with this. Now, to its credit, it does work. It 100% works just like we thought it would, but not necessarily to the extent. And what I mean by this is, with most self-buffing mods, say stuff like High Energy Fire, or stuff like Lucent Blade, for instance. Yes, I know my glimmer's low. Stop shaming me. These buffs are not only very applicable to certain scenarios, so they'll work when you want them to work, and it'll kind of hold onto your charges whenever you don't necessarily want it to come into play. Font of Might, on paper, seems the way to go, because it seems like, oh, just getting a grenade kill, and all of a sudden you have this entire bonus that doesn't take up Charge with Light, and it doesn't do any of that. It seems good, and it's a similar energy cost, so you would assume that the damage that you got was similar too. It's not. It's way less, and it's for 6 seconds. So testing with this mod, our damage increase comes out to around 10%, which, again, compared to something like High Energy Fire or Lucent Blade, is very low and kind of disappointing. Now, again, to its credit, it still does work. If you want to rock this build, same exact build, really. I just kind of swapped out this last mod for Font of Wisdom, mainly just to, again, improve our super energy. You can totally do that. And this damage combo will totally work. You will get a 10% buff for 6 seconds after you pick up a well on all of this, which, you know, through testing is enough to kind of put 2 Anarchies on, a boss or a major or something, and then, you know, shoot a Salvo shot and swap to this, throw a grenade, Osmosis. It's enough to do that, like, all in one go, basically, if you're fast. But it's not really to the extent that we were hoping for. You know, I was assuming that if the buff from Font of Might was going to be really, really strong, it might have lasted for, say, like 6 seconds, but I was assuming we'd get like a 30% buff, something like that. Or if the buff was like 10%, I'd assume it'd be kind of like how it is with Font of Wisdom and get like a 30-second buff, you know? But it's a 10% buff for 6 seconds, which for 4 energy just isn't worth it, in my opinion. You're much better off using something like High Energy Fire if your goal is just to have a flat-out damage output, as this build does a really good job of getting Charged with Light. But realistically, that's not what we're going for. We're using Charge with Light so that after we use our first super in activity, we can get that 25% off instantly. Now, I will say I have messed around with a couple other things. If you're not interested in using Font of Wisdom, you can always use Reactive Pulse, which I found just really fun to use, being another arc mod. Essentially, whenever a combat's close to you and they hit you, if you have a Charge with Light mod, it'll essentially, or if you have a stack of Charge with Light, it'll emit a kind of arc energy wave. And it's a really good get off me tool, as I like to put it out, although your SMG and grenade launcher are going to be good at that. I ended up using Anarchy for this build instead of Tractor Cannon, simply because the debuff is nice, but the one area this build did struggle with noticeably is in higher health targets that Salvager Salvo couldn't 1 or 2 shot, and that escape velocity itself kind of struggled with dealing damage. You might have noticed that, especially in the Waves of Sorrow in on the moon. You might have noticed that in the last video, and that's kind of why I added Anarchy, just a little touch of that to help improve it. You still can use Tractor Cannon. I recommend it still if you want to. I just found myself using this more. But this build's still really strong, and just as a note with the kind of elemental well mods, we only have 6 of them. Let's keep that in mind. We have all of these Charged with Light and Warmind Cell mods, and we have 6 elemental well mods. I'm not saying that that's all we're getting. I'm just saying for now, this is as far as these builds kind of go. In the future, though, I am expecting something a little more in depth. You know, they could go kind of like energy converter or supercharge route and have elemental specific well mods, and that could be really interesting. Or it can always go with stuff they do with like Warmind's protection of Warmind or heal thyself kind of thing, where they do much more than just your abilities and a small damage. They might heal you, or you know, they might like a global debuff around that well, or when picking up that well, you know, you do a certain amount of energy, a certain amount of damage to a, you know, certain kind of enemy, for instance. You know, there's a lot of ways that they can go with this, and overall this build is still very strong. Again, Cuirass of the Falling Star with Thunder Crash is ridiculously good in damage terms. Outside of like a Nightfall boss or potentially even a champion in high-end activity, this is going to one-shot everything. And especially with you doing strikes with this, and it's like arc burn, have fun. You know, something like this is going to tear up in there. This build's still very strong. I still really enjoy it. Again, we're getting our grenade incredibly fast. We're getting Charged with Light, so if you want to use a different Charged with Light mod instead of Font of Might, you can totally do that. Again, this build is insanely customizable. You can even get like a 7th Seraph auto rifle or service revolver and make this into like a partial Warmind cell build. You know, there's a lot that you can do with this, and I encourage you guys to try it out still. Although Font of Might is still disappointing, this build's still really strong. The rest of the gameplay is just me showing off this kind of new version of the build, all it can do, and the benefits of it. Again, Font of Might, a little disappointing, but the build's still as strong as ever. Thank you guys for watching. Have a good one.